Alright, this is a follow-up to my video from yesterday. This is the DC Catholic reporting to you from DC. Yesterday I talked about the state of the United States politically from a Catholic point of view. When we went into the right to life, among other things, and how Catholics can never in good conscience vote for a Democrat. The party is explicitly devoted to preserving the quote-unquote right to abortion. That is, the right to murder your children. So where do we go from here? Well, I would say that there are three things that we can do as Catholics. Three things being the formation of a Catholic party. 2, nullification of federal law when it contradicts the revealed law of the gospel or the natural law. And 3, secession from the Union. Well, the first one, all three of these are probably controversial, but who cares, right? First, the formation of a Catholic party. Now, as I said before, the bishops, by and large, in this country have been convinced that direct participation in the political process by the Church or by Catholics is somehow against the tenets of the faith. That is, that the Church should remain apolitical or nonpartisan, shall we say, in this process. But historically, the Church has always been involved in politics, and just reiterating the point I made last time, religion is of its own nature political. That is, it has to have a public face. It can't be a private thing. This is a new age spiritualist mentality, the do-it-yourself church. You don't have to bring your religion outdoors. And Lord, heaven forbid, you shouldn't. You should actually try to convince your neighbors to believe what you believe, whether it's through, hopefully through the way you live your life, but also from a rational point of view. And in that, I'm saying that Catholicism is the only reasonable religion there is. No other religion is reasonable on its face. So to give you an example, in Germany, in the First Empire, or the Drittes Reich, you could call it the Second Empire, the one which was formed in 1871 during the height or the winding down phase of the Franco-Prussian War, when King William I of Prussia was crowned Kaiser Wilhelm I of the German Reich. There emerged, in response to a Prussian opposition to Catholicism, Das Zentrum, or the Catholic Center Party, and it represented Catholic interest in the imperial diet. And this lasted up until the end of the empire, when it was overthrown following the end of World War I. But it also lasted into Weimar Germany, and it was the proper thing to do for Catholics, because they didn't have a voice. Within Germany itself, they represented about a third of the members, and they just faced opposition, or they faced other political parties, the monarchists, the Prussian monarchists, who were all Protestant, and then they faced the Social Democrats, which they could not in good conscience join, because socialism had been condemned by the Church, rightly so. So forming a Catholic party in the United States is a legitimate thing, even as I say. Although it's been, it's understood now, or it's thought now that the Church should not step into the political arena. I would argue yes, and if it does, it would be the power broker. I'm not saying that every Catholic would vote for it. I mean, most Catholics don't even believe in the real presence. If I believe a poll put out in the past years, and I don't know what that poll is offhand. I mean, half of Catholics vote Democrat, even though that party is pro-abortion. So a Catholic political party would be a good thing. And Catholics could vote in good conscience for office holders. Now, whether that's, where that would begin, it would have to begin on the state level, because federally you can't launch a party without having some traction on the state level first. But it also could just be a state party, where you rally the Catholic faithful in individual states which have high Catholic populations, like Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, Texas, Florida, etc. Okay, so the second option is to nullify federal law that opposes the natural law or the revealed revealed law of Jesus Christ. That is what the Church teaches in her tradition through her magisterium. For example, abortion. Jefferson and Madison talked about the right of nullification in their Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, which were written against the Alien and Sedition Act passed by the Congress, the Federalist Congress under John Adams' presidency. And they had a right. I used to think that this would interminably weaken the federal union, but if a state is convinced, I'm convinced the state can nullify a federal law only if it's against the natural law, not if it's bad policy. Policy is one thing, but principles are something else. So, a law which declares the right to abortion is an unnatural and irrational law, and it's against the revealed law of God. So you have a duty to nullify it. And if Catholics can get together in certain states wherever they're strong enough and organize politically in a Catholic party, they have the right and the duty to nullify that law. Any party calling itself Christian, any politician calling himself or herself a Christian, should engage in this to nullify these laws. And right now, there are a number of states who have passed or are going to pass pro-life laws. And when federal judges strike them down as unconstitutional, they have a right and a duty to say, no, we're going to follow them anyway. Come hell or high water. Whatever happens, happens. The third excuse me. The third choice is to secede from the Union. Now, this is the most controversial of all, because it's understood that secession has been deemed to be unconstitutional. But the party that won the Civil War, or I should say the war between the states, the War of Southern Independence, wrote the histories. And Southerners themselves all too often believe this to be true. But hopefully, or not, I should say hopefully, there is beginning a renaissance of Southern patriotism with the taking down of these statues and monuments to Confederate soldiers and generals and heroes. They're reawakening. This consciousness is coming up again, and the old question is coming up again. Did the states have the right to secede? Preventing them from seceding is like saying the colonies couldn't have seceded from the British Empire, which I would argue they didn't actually have the right, because it was not a voluntary union. It was by an edict of the king, whereby the colonies were formed. But the federal union was created by the voluntary admission or the voluntary taking up of the Constitution by the states. And if they voluntarily gave their consent, why can't they revoke it? Again, for grave reasons. John Calhoun went into this with his theory of the concurrent majority. And if you're going to be ruled by a demagogic majority, a simple numerical majority, or a majority which is looking more and more to be immoral in any number of departments, whether it be abortion, whether it be homosexuality or pornography, the refusal to do anything about pornography, or things like a just wage, a living wage, favoring married couples who have children in terms of compensation, pay, the kind of insurance or public support that people could get who can't afford insurance, helping out your neighbor, but on a state level, not a federal level. If the federal government refuses to do this, if it continues to spend obscene amounts of money on defense while forgetting things like, or just reducing taxes and letting people keep more of their earnings, then the right to secede does exist. It has to. What Lincoln essentially did was bring back the southern states by force into a union they did not want to be a part of. That's just what the British tried to do. Now, again, I think that the colonies did not have a right to secede, but if you think they did, then you ought to say that the southern states had the right to secede as well. You would argue maybe that, they had representation in Congress, and therefore, you would argue that they had representation in Congress, and therefore they should have just taken the decision because they were part of a body which made that deliberation, and they just had to accept the results of it. But Calhoun's point was that there was a serious difference in culture between the North and the South, based largely upon agriculture. The North was engaged heavily in banking and mercantilism, industrialism, and the South wanted to preserve his culture, which was a more a calmer way of living, a patriarchal society, one which prized the arts and thinking about principles and philosophizing more than the North, which was more interested in practical things. So when you have such a disjunction between cultures, he would argue he had the right to secede, and I agree with him. Now, there is such a vast gulf between cultures, the pro-life culture and the pro-death culture, that there absolutely is a right to secede. And there has to be. I mean, the Union was not perpetual. It's not a sacred thing, as Abraham Lincoln argued. It is a compact between the states. And again, I say, if the states voluntarily joined the Union, they should have the right to voluntarily leave it. So that's where I'll leave you there. I'll leave you here now, and perhaps I'll have something more to say as time goes on. But for the time being, this is the DC Catholic signing off. God bless you all.